I wanted to talk about the Black Company, and Joe is the perfect person to talk about it with because you are the Glenn Cook fan. The Glenn Cook fan.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that that's what I'm becoming.
There are worse things in life to be
That's
honest.
true.
So yeah, I just want to gush about this series because I finished it and it's so good. Like almost 12 months to the day, I read this entire series minus Port of Shadows. We're not going to
It
talk about that.
it doesn't count.
Um,
It's okay.
yeah, so it was great. I was very surprised with how much I loved it because it's very dark, but it's oddly hopeful at the same time.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, for anyone that's watching that hasn't read the series, we're just gonna go full on spoilers. I'm so sorry, Kitty. Um,
He was screaming, so I had to pick him up. He's impossible
well,
to see, but yeah.
he blends in with the void. He's a void. Um, but yeah, so we're just gonna go full on spoilers because I don't care and I just want to gush, and I need to have it on the internet for public consumption because otherwise, what's the point? But
Exactly.
anyways, I just rambled on. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Joseph from Joseph Reads Books. I'm working on reading Glenn Cook's entire bibliography this year, and I am 9 books away from being done.
Holy shit! I didn't realize that was gonna be like all in the calendar year. Like you were gonna be finished.
Yep.
Holy crap! Until he hopefully writes more? Question mark. Allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, he has 3 sequels to the Black Company series done, and a fourth one is halfway done.
Holy crap!
Yeah, a pitiless reign was supposed to be the book that takes place at the end of the series, and that is now 4 books, 3 of which are finished.
Nice. All
He's been a little
right.
busy since COVID.
Well. All right. Well, I need them now, please. Thank you. Um. Yeah. So, how did you get into Glenn Cook? You probably talked about this before, and I just forgot about it. But how did you get into Glenn Cook, or
I don't know if
specifically
I've
the Black
mentioned
Company?
it.
I guess.
I it kind of just I kind of just ran into it on probably Reddit. I can't remember. It was about 8 years ago now. I was just desperate to find new things to read. My reading had just like stalled out, and I just kept seeing it get mentioned. And then I think I just happened upon it in a used bookstore and just finally gave it a chance. And then I read all of them back to back to back.
You're a series binger. I think you mentioned like
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
So so have you reread any of them? Or
I have read the first book 4 times
oh,
because I
just
just love it.
just for kicks and giggles.
Yep.
I so yeah. I guess that's a good segue. Um, I'd always heard like oh the first book just get through it and read the second book and then it gets like his normal style. I loved the first book.
Yeah,
Like
me too.
I don't know why people crap on it all the time. Like not crap on it, but say, oh, just get through it and you'll get to the rest and get to his actual like his real series starter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so good. It's it's so good. It's so good. Um, it introduces you to Croker, who is amazing. I love him
Yep.
so much. Um, yeah. So that was what you said 8 years ago, and you've
Yeah.
just been. Did you slowly read them, or like each? Because it's kind of what is it? It's kind of got the rub and hob treatment of like separated into like little sub series. So did you just do the entire thing straight through, or did you do like
All of
sub?
them. I just
Nice,
read them all back to back.
nice. Who is your favorite, other than Croker? Who is your favorite character and/or analyst?
Favorite analyst is Mergen. And
Nice.
then
Yes. Thank you. I don't know why
and
people crap on Mergen, and by people I mean Alan.
yeah, I don't know. I've honestly watched so few conversations about the Black Company. I'm kind of clueless when it comes to like what most people think of the series, other than people think that the first three are the only ones worth reading, which sounds insane to me.
It's un it is not debatably false. All of
Yeah.
them are worth reading. Um, yeah. So is that your favorite character and analyst, or do you have a different favorite character?
I don't know for favorite character. It's really hard because they're just all wonderful. I mean, probably One Eye if I had to pick a character that wasn't an analyst.
But without One Eye, you can't have One Eye without Goblin. It's like,
That is true.
uh, I was surprised with how one, with how connected I was with all of the characters, and two, how connected I was with all of the characters and how distinct they are, given that you have this singular point of view. That he was, I think Glenn Cook is unmatched in that regard of being able to create these well fleshed out, dynamic, compelling characters, even through an analyst's perspective. It's just so good. I'm just
He's
gonna
he's
say that over
also
and over again. So good, so good.
he's also just so efficient with the
Yeah,
way he creates characters, and it doesn't take long, and it takes a paragraph to do what a lot of writers do in pages, and
yeah,
you automatically understand who they are, why they're there, and why you love them or hate them.
yeah. I not just characters, but even scenes as well. Like going back to the first book, when Darling, you first meet Darling, it is so simply told, and it's not even graphic in a sense, but it is the scene where you meet her is absolutely and utterly disgusting. I
Yep.
genuinely was sick to my stomach. I I've never felt that way while reading a book, and yet I still read on because I was like, I have to know what happens, and like it wasn't something that was gratuitous. Um, I don't know. It was not even conflicting emotions. It was just the skill and craft and ability of Glenn Cook to convey the necessary information the way that it was meant to, I guess. Um, and getting that, I don't know, emotional reaction out of people without being manipulative. I
Yeah.
think that's a really, really good skill.
Like you said, gratuitous is what came to mind for me because I read other stuff that's grimdark or whatever people want to call it, and it seems like they almost revel in what's going on instead of just getting across the impact and kind of moving on. They just want to make you wallow in it instead of having you feel it and then, you know, get to the rest of the story.
Yeah. And then he later, like, he even glosses over, like, Croker's like, these my friends did some bad stuff. I'm not gonna make them look bad. So you know, like just by that, him saying that they did even more awful stuff themselves. But you're rooting for these guys, and it's just a weird like I don't know, juxtaposition, counterintuitive thing. Not something that you expect. At least for me, who is not very well read in Grimdark, to be honest. Um, but
Yeah, that's the thing is it's just like you're saying, it's just so great. It's just incredible that he does what he does.
yeah. I also really like how each analyst perspective that you get, it is in conversation, like in the text with the other analysts, but also from like a narrative perspective. You're like, oh, you're seeing how slightly unreliable each analyst is, and unreliable in that they have their biases and their perspectives, and that's conveyed really, really well. And you don't realize that until you see another analyst's perspective.
Yeah, it's genius. There's something along those lines that I wanted to mention. I took a note while I was refreshing my memory. There is in the third book, in the White Rose, there is an in-world reason why Beaumance's narrative is third person. It comes up. Am I still there? It shows me not on the screen.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
there.
There is an in-world reason. So, of course, the person who wrote the Beaumance narrative was Raven. And at one point, when Croker is in Bowman's house, like looking through the rest of the paperwork and stuff. I forgot who it is that mentions it, but they say, yeah, this is written in a style of someone with a classical education. People haven't written historical narratives like this in a few hundred years. So this person was obviously well educated, which you look at Raven's background, he comes from the upper crust of society and was classically educated. So when he wrote something in the style of an analyst, it's in third person instead of first person.
I think you just blew my mind because I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it just blew my mind when I first read that part. I was like, wait a second. I had to like double back and then really think about it because as soon as you get into that book, you're like, why is this third person? And
Right.
then yeah, there's a reason.
Yet another reason for me to reread these books. Holy crap, I didn't even realize that. Um,
My
yeah,
wife is
holy.
on that book right now, and she's like, who's writing them? And I'm like, I'm not telling you. She's like 80% of the way through the White Rose, and it's right. She's right to the point where she's about to find out who wrote Bomance's stuff, and I'm like, I'm not telling you. You got to read on.
Nice. Obviously she's liking them
Oh
because
yeah,
one, she's on the White Rose, and two, you guys are still married, so that's good. So, um, but yeah, going back to analysts and characters and stuff like that. I once we switched to Mergen's perspective as an analyst, I was like, no, no, I want to stay with Croker. I'm so used to him. Why are we changing? What's happening? And then actually even before that we get ladies annals, and I'm just like, why are we changing? I don't like this. I want Croker. But then Glenn Cook, again, to beat a dead horse here, that he's able to make these perspectives so compelling, and like you're like, okay, I want more Lady, I want more Mergen, I want more Sleepy. And you're like, oh, now I gotta go back to this guy, but then you're back to that perspective. You're just completely immersed, and it's just, ugh, I cannot wait to read more Glenn Cook. I swear, because if this is indicative of his writing and his skill, like, it's gonna be so good.
yeah. He so speaking of that, now that I've read 43 of his novels, he does ebb and flow, but that little spark that makes him what he is as a writer is like always there. I mean, and it's amplified in other works, like in the Dread Empire, his descriptive prose and his characters and their interpersonal relationships are just on another level compared to even the Black Company. And then with like Garrett I mean, he's writing his favorite genre because his favorite author is John D. MacDonald. So he's like, I'm gonna write mysteries and explore this little world that I made up, and it's his playground. And so yeah, everything he has something good going for it that's different than the Black Company.
Yeah. So you finished. So did you finish it within a year, or the
What?
series, like the
The
Black Company?
Yeah, I'll double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I did because I read them very fast.
Very fast. Okay. Because my question was going to be the last two books in particular. I guess even just all the Glittering Plane books. What was your What were your thoughts on those? Because for the first two. What is it? Oh my god, I just have the bind ups here, and I'm blanking on the titles. Either way, the first two books in the Glittering Stone, I wasn't sure what to make of it. It seemed actually a more tightly plotted series or sub-series. But then once you get to Water Sleeps, for me, Water Sleeps and Sleepy's perspective, I'm like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah,
And then
it's
the emotional catharsis of what is everything in Soldiers Live. Um, I I didn't expect this series of being so dark to be so emotionally and hopefully impactful. Like, it's a love story. I
yep.
would not have thought that. I
Yeah,
know.
it's so I finished them. I started reading them in July and I finished them in October. So,
Oh, holy
yeah,
crap!
4 months. Yeah. I did not get a lot of sleep during that time because usually it would be like, well, I'm going to read a little before bed, and I'm like, "Oh no, it's 2 a.m." It's usually how that worked every night.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the thing with water sleeps, especially like you said, like you get into water sleep and there's that huge time jump and it's kind of jarring, but he immediately just settles you in and you're like, oh, okay, now I see where we're at, and this is getting real good real fast.
yeah, and I mean, he obviously had Lady's perspective, but Sleepy's perspective in particular, like Glenn Cook is the antithesis of men can't write women in fantasy. Like
Yeah,
it's just he can just write characters. That's it. Like not doesn't matter. But
yeah.
his female characters, Lady, Sleepy, I can never pronounce her name. Sarai? No, Sarai. Mergen's wife.
Yeah, it's
Sarah?
Sahra, Sarah. Yeah,
Something like that. I don't know.
yeah,
So incredibly compelling and I don't know. It's just especially that shift of Sarah, where she finally gets Mergen back, and she just kind of she's like, all right, I'm gonna let go this mantle of power that I've had, and I can just let it go. And it's not a case of like, oh, I'm deferring to Mergen as the man. It's like I've took this on when I didn't want to, and
yeah.
now I'm releasing it. And it's just, uh,
And then you look at just the villains. I mean, look at Soul Catcher and the lady early in the series. That's one of the things I always talk about is this series has everything modern readers are looking for in fantasy, and they just don't read it, and I don't get it, or they don't get past the first three. It's like, what are a lot of modern readers looking for? They're looking for non-European based fantasy, and that is everything after the first 3.5 books. They're looking for strong female characters that aren't tropes, and they're looking for a huge cast of characters that aren't just white people. And it's like that's everything in the
the
books of
black
the
man.
South and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, it's so good. Um. And just compelling character dynamics. Like again, to
Yeah.
go back to One Eye and Goblin, every single time One Eye and Goblin was either on the page or even mentioned, I was like, oh man, One Eye and Goblin. Like I love them so much. It's so good. And then when everything happened where Goblin dies,
Yeah.
um, and then One Eye is like holding on, and it's everyone's getting old, and it's just so it's nothing is retcon, but everything is built upon each other, and it's so I don't know how Glenn Cook did it. If he does he like plan stuff like like
No.
broadly or
I just read about that. No, he has like a general idea, but he just goes where the story takes him. He does not plot.
it's
Yeah, that blew my mind when I found that
yeah,
out. I was like, you can't be serious.
and how consistent he is with everything. And actually, now that I think about it, I think it I don't know if it was intentional, but like having the analyst perspectives and having their unreliability or their reliability kind of in question by other analysts that like doesn't quite retcon it, but like it's able to like he's able to like not manipulate the lore or the characters or anything like that, but just again give a different perspective and build upon that or give more context to previous interactions. And it's just
Yeah, it makes you think like when you see, especially once you get to Mergen and you see the way Goblin talks, you're like, oh wait, is he always talking like that? And Croker was like censoring it because he's just foul mouthed and nasty more so than in Croker's books, or is it that that's how Goblin treats Mergen versus how he treats Croker? And so there's so many layers to it. It's just incredible.
And then even that, you don't even get a description of Croker until Mergen
Yep.
describes Croker, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is awesome. Uh, but yeah, and then Croker's just. I guess I should have known that it was going to be like some sort of love story because from the beginning, Croker, everyone kind of gives him crap about, like, oh, you're just writing romance novels about the lady. And I didn't expect that to turn into what it became their relationship um, at the end in Soldiers Live and him turning into this thing, like taking over this mantle of the guardian, I guess, is what you would
It's
call it.
yeah, he's a god Shivetya, isn't that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just taking his place because, and this is another thing, of course, Glenn Cook will get into. The god is so old, he's just like, I want to die. Can we please trade places so I can die? I'm tired of existing.
And it's like it was so I don't know, not quite a rug, rug being pulled out from under you, but it's such a simple, very direct moment where you can like pinpoint like, hey, this is completely changes things, but it feels so natural. Again, that he doesn't plan this stuff and it just builds up to it. It's just what?
I just read something about that. Yeah, he has an article in a book called Writing Fantasy Heroes. It's like his essay, and it's something along the lines of basically called Shit Happens. And what he says is when things like that happen when he's writing, they just have to happen. You know, it could be the hero falls off his horse and dies and wading through a creek for no reason. And he said he keeps those in the book because they feel real. When a writer tries to avoid situations like that, it takes away the authenticity of the work. And so that is how he stays true and why things like that happen. And it's like, wow, this feels logical and like something that would happen because stuff like that just happens.
Shit happens.
Yep.
One thing, if I had to nitpick, and I actually, it's a little bit more than a nitpick. Um, which one was it? It was a lady's perspective one. I think it was a lady's perspective. Oh yeah, she is the darkness. Um, I think if I have to pick a least favorite, that's gonna be my least favorite because it just felt like I mean, after that point, everything became better. It became much more fleshed out. But Lady's perspective and description of like Narajan and that entire culture, I'm like, this is borderline offensive. But then I'm like, but this is Lady, so Lady's probably being offensive. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm so torn and conflicted. And I think I put in my review something like Glenn Cook was probably watching too much Temple of Doom around the time that he wrote it. So
Probably. I mean, to give if we give the lady the benefit of the doubt, she's incredibly ancient and cares almost nothing about like the regular world. So it's already going to be like looking at a society through the eyes of an alien because up until the point that she's freed from the dominator, she's essentially just been the ruler of everything
yeah,
alongside him. So I don't know, but yeah, it is a little rough. That's definitely the roughest of the later books.
yeah.
I
Speaking
will
of
say,
Dominator, I did expect him to play a bigger role throughout the entire series. I feel like he was still just like a background character, other than really. I mean, I guess in the White Rose a little bit.
yeah, of course he's like the ends up being the big bad at the end of Shadows Linger, which that book is one of my favorites in the entire series. It's so just terrifying. Like the
Oh, that's the Gothic one where they are going to the house or whatever.
yeah, And then he, of course, is in the End of the White Rose with the lady and Bomance and Darling all having to team up to deal with him. And then, of course, the Silver Spike. But yeah, he doesn't really do anything after that. Maybe the future sequels will involve dealing with him, and we'll get the new analysts, which were Croker's adopted daughters.
I loved that, by the way. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I can't say that because I would be spoiling a different series. So never mind. Um, Speaking of Silver Spike, what are your thoughts on like the reading order? Well, general thoughts on Silver Spike and also the reading order because I know it's like weirdly published
Yeah,
same
it
year
was
but
published
month.
in '89, and it was published right after Shadows Linger, and so it needs to be read before Shadows Linger. Like it's three. Everyone calls it 3.5 for a reason, and I was just looking this up yesterday to refresh my memory, and people have been saying since like
Wait, before
Usenet
Shadows
groups.
Linger, or
Yeah, so you want to go Black Company, or sorry, Shadow Games.
oh,
Two
okay,
I get them confused, but yeah, you want to go Black Company, Shadows Linger, White Rose, and then the Silver Spike because
that's
as
that's what
as
I did.
far back
Okay,
as like Usenet groups in the early '90s, people were like, "Yeah, read the Silver Spike before you read uh, Shadow Games." Yes.
okay, because that's what I did, and everyone was like, oh, just read. Other people were like, oh, just read Silver Spike at the end of like after you finish Dreams of Steel, and I'm like, publication order though. Why would he publish that if
Yeah, the way it's set up in that collection, I don't know why it is that way. I guess it's because they couldn't fit a fourth book in, and they didn't want to put, you know, them in not in chronological order in the second collection. So it's weird.
I do like Silver Spike. Like it feels the most like standalone-ish
Hmm.
of all the books, and as much as apparently people don't really like Raven, I actually kind of like Raven, even though he's a little bit of a douchebag. Um, but yeah, I like him, and I think it's a good into his and Darling's story. Um, but
Yeah, Raven is just one of the more like complex characters, especially in the first half of the series. You meet him and he's about to murder his wife and his former best friend, and then he's just like this edge lord for like the first like two books, and then when you get to the Silver Spike, you're like, man, like I guess I know why Darling doesn't like him, and then you figure out that he like flaked out on his kids for revenge, and he's too scared to go back to them, and it's very complex. I really like I appreciate that aspect of him. Yeah, you don't have to like him to respect him or
yeah,
respect his story.
yeah, I do. This is how I work. My brain just goes completely different directions. Um, I do to switch gears. I do really appreciate how Glenn Cook is incorporates writing and tropes from other genres without completely changing the story itself. Like we already mentioned, like the gothic horror of in Shadows Linger. In Bleak Seasons, he's playing with like time travel and like
Hmm.
time dynamics, and I mean that's mostly it, really. But I just like how he from everything that I've seen you talk about, like he's obviously so widely read, and that informs his stories, and without like him trying to imitate that stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and plus another thing is he's writing war novels. Like the Black Company are war novels on like a level not reached by most people who specialize in war novels.
yeah, I saw something. I can't remember where it was where um that apparently a lot of like active duty military really gravitated toward this series.
Yeah.
And I absolutely and utterly see why. Because I was an army brat. Like I wasn't. I wasn't in the service, but my dad was in the service. I grew up in that. My brother was in the service, so I grew up around that. Um, and I actually wanted to join the military. And so reading this series was so weirdly nostalgic for me, and also cozy. Like there's a coziness to them. I don't know if you feel that way, but I definitely feel that way.
Yeah,
And maybe that's the nostalgia more than anything, but yeah.
I know one funny thing. Glenn Cook has said that his son, who might still be in the military, he was an officer in the military, and he said that his son doesn't let people know that Glenn Cook's his dad because people, other soldiers will just nerd out about it, and so he's just like, no, I don't want to hear it.
That's funny. That is funny. Um, that's hysterical. Because Glenn Cook was, oh God, remind me. He was in the
He was in the
military, but I
Navy.
can't
He was
remember
in
what
the
branch.
Navy
Navy. There you go. Why did I think Marines?
because
Um,
he worked with a lot of Marines. They were always on his ship. Fun
that's that.
fact: his book, his first novel under his name, which is Heirs of Babylon, it most of it takes place on a ship, and it was the ship he served on. It
That's a
makes a cameo.
standalone, right?
Yeah,
All right.
it's not
That
very
might
good,
be.
but
I don't care.
maybe you'll
I'll
like it.
I'll read it. I'll take. Oh, I don't care. I don't care. Um, yeah, because I'm full in at this point. With Glenn Cook. So I mean, hopefully, even outside of the Black Company series, we'll find out what Dragon Never Sleeps. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, I don't know. I could just keep saying, series so good. What is your favorite book of the series
the
other than Port of Shadows?
Port of Shadows. Hey, to be fair, half of Port of Shadows is good. It just happens to be the flashbacks that take place in that book. But I think my favorite is, which is the one that Mergen is in, where he's detached from time. Is that Bleak Seasons?
That is Bleak Seasons. Yeah.
Okay, that is my favorite because it's so different than the others, and also you spend the whole book trying to figure out why he has been torn away from reality, and oh, it ends up being genocide. Wow. Okay, yeah, it's just incredible. Like I too would detach from reality if I had witnessed something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought until Bleak Seasons, Black Company was my favorite of the series thus far, and then I read Bleak Seasons, and I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite one. Morgan's great, and the narrative execution, and then like the just the makeup of the story. This is amazing. And then I read Water Sleeps, and I'm like, no, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think, like, from an emotional perspective, like, Soldiers Live is the perfect ending to the series, and it's my favorite in that regard. But I don't know, it's a razor's edge, like, flip flop situation between Water Sleep and Soldiers Live. Like, it's such that he's able to culminate everything into Soldiers Live while still making you fall even more in love again with the series and with these characters. Like,
Yeah, what a way to end a series. Like
right?
those two books. It's incredible.
Again, One Eye and Goblin. Oh my God. Like, I think it was Water Sleeps, or no, I think it was Bleak. It was one of the books, Bleak Seasons or She's the Darkness, where One Eye and Goblin are off doing whatever, and then they're just mentioned, like I mentioned before, they were just mentioned on the page, and I'm just like, One Eye Goblin, oh my God, I love
Yep.
One Eye Goblin.
Yep.
Ah, so good.
See, yeah, there's something special about them, and it just starts immediately in the Black Company. They start squabbling and creating their little spells to troll each other, and it just never ends, and it's wonderful.
It's comedic relief that turns into, oh, this is not even just like comedic relief. It's like I'm genuinely invested in these characters. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But yeah. So again, I could just beat a dead horse and be like, this book's so serious, so good. Um, are you planning on rereading them once you finish all of Glenn Cook's biography?
Yeah, I'm gonna take my time. The when I reread them, I'll probably just do the Black Company, the series, and I'll just do like one a month or something.
Nice.
Probably next year. We'll see.
No pressure, and no, like you don't have to say yes because we're on the internet. Um, but I would love to join you for that if you would like a buddy to read it with.
That's fine
Especially
with
one a
me.
month, and it's a reread. Like it's not like there's a lot of pressure. So
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
I'm gonna do them on audio because I haven't done. I've only done the first book on audio. The rest I read eyes on paper.
Is it the same audio narrator for all of them, or are they different?
It changes based on the analyst.
Oh,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm assuming the audiobook narrator is good, at least of what you listen to.
The first one is the only one I've listened to. I think his name is Paul Vitor, and he sounds like Croker to me. So
Nice. All right. Yeah, I again, I could just like beat a dead horse and be like, this book's
I have a
so
few
good.
notes.
Nice. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Have some like structure to this chaos that I've invited you to. I'm so sorry.
So the plane of fear in The White Rose just messed with me. It still lives rent free in my head. It was like the first time I had next level existential dread from an event happening in a book. Like to think that the reason the plane of fear exists is because there was a threat worse than the Dominator, and Wizards had to tear reality from somewhere else to deal with him. It's like I can't even fathom that level of power and the fact that they needed to rip a hole in another dimension and pull it into theirs to deal with him. And then when it almost gets out from underneath the old man tree, like it grabs Croker, I was just like, oh, no. And like
Yeah.
it just adds so much depth to this world. It just feels lived in and just worn out.
And remind me, the plane of fear, that's also where the stones are, right? Or was
Yeah,
that the White
the
Rose? Okay.
Menhirs, yeah, where they
Yeah.
live and they're
That was
controlled by the
also
tree.
bizarre.
Yeah, it's because it's from another dimension. It's alien because we
Yeah.
have no concept of it.
So actually, now that you mention it, considering it's from another dimension, is there like I know that we've talked about you mentioned this before about how there's like mentions in other books, but like so is there like a you know
I don't
same universe type thing?
I don't know. I know he likes to put the titles of his books in other books, so you'll see something that's like I mentioned, A Shadow of All Night Falling. I just saw in a Garrett P.I. novel. That's the first book in the Dread Empire series, and you'll see that he likes to put those because his titles are already just so bizarre and just no one else labels books the way he does, and then he just slips those statements, I guess, into other books. And yeah, I think that the shadow gates lead to other places that he has written about, but he's never said yes or no. But I
There's
think there's a good chance.
there's 16
Yeah,
shadow gates if I
16.
recall correctly. Wow. I'll never have that good of a memory moment again. Um yeah, it's just it's
And
I don't know.
we know one or two are broken. The one to Katavar is now broken, and then there's the one that leads to where Sarah and her people are from. The Nyangbo, or I think is what their names are. The
Yeah.
uh, it's like Hessian or whatever. That's where they're from, and so that's only what 5 of them. So there's another 11. Could lead to anywhere.
How many other series does he have again? um
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
Oh,
Um
and
yep. I was going to
I
say
got
what
another
were
one.
your other notes?
So I forgot that in Shadow Games that the lady in Croker had a date in Opal, and it was the same place where Raven killed his wife. like the same restaurant where they end up signing up with Raven. And then the company took she canceled their plans to ride on like a grain barge to get back across the sea, and instead signed them up for a ship. And it was the ship they took with Soulcatcher to get to the north in the first book.
This the benefits of rereading, or at least Google slash Wikipedia slash Reddit. Um, I'm definitely gonna have to look out for like tidbits because I'm sure there's plenty. There's obviously plenty that I missed on the first read, and just piecing it all together as I reread and seeing how the not plannedness that he had, how it all is all still interconnected and
Yeah.
the callbacks and all that good stuff. Um,
I also like it doesn't take up much space in Shadow Games, but Croker goes back to where he was born, which is the city of Padora, and at one point he thinks he sees his sister, but he's not sure and he doesn't approach her and just kind of moves on because, that's not his life anymore, but he sees a woman, an older woman that looks like his mother did at that age, and he thinks that was his sister. He like wandered through the slums where he was born and then just doesn't reconnect and just moves on. And it's a very short little chunk of that book. And I remember it the first time, and then when I was like refreshing my memory, I was like, wow, that's incredibly sad thinking about what happens to like him for the rest of the series. Is like he got that close to connecting, but had no desire to connect to his previous life because the company is everything.
yeah. Holy crap! Yeah, because I remember that scene. I didn't remember about the older lady, um, the woman that he sees. So yeah, that's interesting. But to uh, kind of continue on your point about the company being everything. Like again, that goes into the the militaristic aspect of it, of like the company is everything. Like you're so enclosed, not enclosed. Yeah, isolated, whatever, to the point that these people are your family. They are your mother, your father, your brothers. And I think One Eye and or Goblin uh make a joke, or no, it was to Lady. They make a joke to Lady saying, "Thanks, mom," or "All right, mom," and I died laughing, and I'm like, it's so funny. Anyways, yeah, it's just how for this being a fantasy world and all these incredibly fantastic things, they're very human characters and very human emotions and dynamics between all of them, and I that's really 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 hard to pull off.
Yeah,
Um, so
it spoiled me. Like now I look at other fantasy books and I'm like, this, it's not the
I
same.
I genuinely like. I'm trying to think. It didn't quite put me in a book hangover, but like I, it's really hard for me to get into fantasy now. Like a lot of other fantasy, because this is the Black Company is the type of stuff I'm looking for.
Yep.
Um,
I'm
and not
trying to see
necessarily
what
like
I
the
read shortly
grim.
after with my Black Company hangover. I read a lot of science fiction and nonfiction.
Got it out of your system. Actually, so tangentially related. Um, the Company by KJ Parker. KJ Parker in general, he's grim, dark, whatever that means, but he's just very dark
Mm.
in his writing. Um he's not like graphic or anything like that, and he doesn't like actually describe anything physically. He just has very very morally gray characters, and I actually would recommend his books, akin to Glenn Cook.
Oh yeah, I after you mentioned it and then I watched Alan's video, I was like, I have to read this book. Like,
Yeah,
I have no choice now.
yeah. I obviously still need to read it too, because that's the one that I have left of his standalones, at least. But um yeah, what you have any other notes that you took?
No, I do like. to think about the fact that the limper, the only reason he was so resilient was because he was too stupid to die. Because he's got to be like the dumbest, powerful person I've ever read in a book.
Yeah, I kept him like, he's back. He's
Yeah,
back. Why
he's
does
just
he
too
not
stupid.
die? He's the cockroach of the
Yeah,
Taken.
yeah, he is. Thinking about
Ugh.
the Taken too, like it's just upsetting because a lot of those people, yeah, when they were on the other side before the newer Taken were created, like they sucked. There were no good people in the war against the Lady, but to think that their autonomy is stripped away from them and they're dominated by the Lady, it's like, yeah, it's just really weird to think about that level of magic where you're stripping people away, stripping their sense of self away and just turning them into these like weapons.
Yeah. I mean, it goes into the whole like military fantasy of this is like they are, I mean, the Black Company, that the Taken are what the Black Company could have become.
Yeah.
They're like one step away from that. Minus the super magical powers.
Yep.
Um for some people. But,
I will say Glenn Cook's way of writing magic is always like it is in the Black Company. Like it's just devastating. Well, I can't say that because I still have to read Instrumentalities of the Night, but the way he does magic and like the Dread Empire and stuff, like there's a little more kind of spelling it out in some cases, but it's still that same like catastrophic effect that magic does in like the Black Company. So the more powerful, the more just awful things become. And so that's consistent through his writing.
oh, that's fun. That'll be nice to look forward to.
Yeah.
So,
The Dread Empire is just epic fantasy, so you get a lot more of that, basically.
oh, I didn't. Why did I not realize that? Dread Empire's epic fantasy. So, okay, yeah, I'll read that. That's like 4 books.
No, that
5 books.
it is, I think, wait, there's 8 of them, but they're all incredibly short. Like, the entire series is the same length as 2 Wheel of Time books, or like 2 Malazan books, or a Brandon Sanderson book. So,
All right, so I mean, there's plenty of Glenn Cook I have to read now, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. Um, yeah, I think I found you like your channel while I was in either right before I started Black Company or in the midst of my read. Either way, you are the master of all Glenn Cook. So I will definitely be reaching out and be like, listen, I need your help. I need your guidance on this book that you've already read. What's happening and or gush about it. So
yeah, one of the reasons I'm happy that I've read them all now is because other than the Black Company, there's nothing online about any of his other books. There's no wiki for the Dread Empire, which desperately needs one. And then like the Garrett PI stuff is nice because Wikipedia for some reason has decent synopsis of all of those, but everything else there's nothing.
sounds like you need to get it going.
Yeah.
So
I plan on making a like retrospective of everything he's written, or maybe I know I'm definitely going to do like a tier guide, like what must be read, and so on and so forth. And I'll probably try to do little guides for the other stuff, but I might have to reread them again to do that. So
I mean, as I read, I can definitely share as I share my thoughts. You can be like, oh, maybe that'll like spark some memories there. Um, but I'm getting far ahead of myself. Um, yeah, so we're almost at an hour. So thank you so much for letting me gush incoherently at you for this.
yeah,
So
this is the first time I've been able to talk about it like this. I have one friend who's read them, and then I, I guess he wasn't paying attention or something because when we talk about it, he's like, "Wait, what? That happened?" So yeah, this has been fun.
just a suggestion. Maybe if your wife would like to come on your channel, maybe you can do like a Black Company, Shadows Linger, White Rose recap
I'm trying.
discussion. Just saying. So, all right. But thank you again. I appreciate it. I should have mentioned this before, but Joe's channel will be linked in the description. And I will. I don't know how to sign off on these things. Bye.
Bye bye.